Coming up on This Week in Radio Tech, we found something that works well for broadcasters. It works really well, actually. It sounds good, it connects people together, and it's free. Marc Bakos joins us from England on TWiRT. This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you by Broadcasters General Store with outstanding service, savings, and support. Online at bgs.cc. By the Ruby console from Lawo. See Lawo in your future at lawo.com/TWiRT. By Angry Audio. Audio problems disappear when you get angry at angryaudio.com. And by the CalRec Type R console system. Type R is a brand new, modular, expandable IP-based radio system from CalRec Audio. Hey, welcome into This Week in Radio Tech, the show where we talk about everything from the microphone to the light bulb at the top of the tower and everything in between. And we got some in between to talk about today on the show. Hi, I'm Kirk Harnack, your host, and I am here in the Telos Alliance studio in Nashville, Tennessee. I am, first of all, thankful for the Telos Alliance, my employer, for giving me a little bit of time to do this show every Thursday. I enjoy it, and they get benefit, and I hope you get benefit too. That's what I'm really all about here, is sharing and spreading information about broadcast technology to make all of our lives easier, to make broadcasting better, to make the product better, and maybe make it so we can, as engineers, we can all sleep at night with new and better technologies that let us do that. So it's our 442nd episode. We got a good one here for you today. As usual, Chris Tobin couldn't be with us today. He is putting out a transmitter fire. I hope that's a figurative transmitter fire that he's putting out, but he's doing something today with a transmitter in the New York City area. So it's just me and our guest. Thank goodness there's a guest, because you wouldn't want to hear me go on for an hour. Our guest is my new friend, Marc Bakos from England. Marc, welcome into This Week in Radio Tech.
Hi, Kirk. Thanks so much for having me.
It's delightful to have you here. I met you for the first time, I guess, just at this past NAB. You walked into the Telos booth and said, "Hey, I'm Marc Bakos, and I'm with," what company is that?
I'm from Cleanfeed.net. It's like we like to call ourselves. I'm shamelessly wearing the branded shirt today. I thought, what clothing do I wear? So I thought, well, I'll just pick up the same shirt that I wore at the show. So no, it's a pleasure to meet you. Well, have met you at the show to begin with, and of course be a guest on the show today.
We didn't get much of a chance to talk at the NAB show. We were so busy. And then in the past, hour and a half, you and I got to talk for a good 45 minutes or so. And so it's been great getting to know you there. And after talking with you, I'm even more excited about our topic today. And that is talking about the technology, or one of the technologies that broadcasters are using to connect to outside broadcasts. And anytime they need to connect outside talent or two locations together, there are a number of different technologies, and the technology that Cleanfeed, the company that you co-founded, is using, I think is a really promising one. Obviously promising because you said that you have thousands or even tens of thousands of users of your service. So we're going to get to that in just a minute. We're talking about connecting over the internet easily and conveniently for talent and studios to connect to each other. So that's what Marc Bakos is going to be talking about. We'll get more of an introduction from Marc here in just a minute. Let's hurry up and jump right into our first commercial break in our show. This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you in part by our friends at CalRec.
CalRec's Type R is a modular, expandable IP-based radio system featuring 3 slimline panels, a fader panel, a large soft panel, and a small soft panel easily configured to give the operator full control. Layouts are saved and recalled quickly between shows. A single 2RU core with integrated I/O gets customers up and running fast, and that single core can power up to 3 independent mixing environments with no sharing of DSP resources. Available in 4 DSP packs, and as your station grows, larger packs can be added, enabling it to grow with you. Power to the surface is supplied via standard PoE switches, keeping cabling to a minimum. Type R is fully AES67 compatible, as defined by SMPTE 2110, which means that it is also compliant with NMOS discovery and connection management specs. All these features combined make Type R the most flexible radio console you can buy. Find out more at calrec.com/TWiRT.
Thanks a lot, CalRec, for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. And please go to the website at calrec.com/TWiRT. Hey, studio guests are only human, and humans, well, they do things like cough and sniff and clear their throats, stuff you don't want on the air. And you can cure this with the Angry Audio Guest Gizmo. You press the cough button and you mute the mic. Every guest needs one of these. And you know what else guests need? Well, headphones, which is why each Guest Gizmo also has a studio-quality headphone amp with individual volume control. Anything else? You've seen those beautiful mic arms with the built-in LED tallies? They look good, but how do you light them up? The Guest Gizmo does that too, illuminating the red LED whenever the mic is hot. And installing the Guest Gizmo in your studio furniture could not be easier. You just need one of these, a 2 3/4-inch hole saw, and a steady hand. No router required. Your studio gets a clean, custom appearance, and you get all the credit. Check out the Guest Gizmo and all the other cool gadgets at angryaudio.com. Angryaudio.com. Trust me, you want to go there and see the things that can make your life easier when building and improving studios. Angryaudio.com. Thanks to them also for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. All right, it's Kirk along with our guest, Marc. Chris Tobin couldn't be with us, but Marc Bakos is with us from Cleanfeed.net. Marc, we were talking earlier. First, give us just a little bit of background on yourself. You're in England. You weren't born there, but you live in England now, and you decided at some point to start this company to do some pretty cool stuff. Give me the elevator speech on Marc.
Yeah, no, sure. Well, I'm probably going to perfect it today. So yeah, I was born in South Africa. Actually moved to the UK when I was 9. The accent quickly disappeared, and so you'd probably never be able to tell. Yeah, I suppose my work career it began off in audio. I'm actually a trained audio engineer, and I sort of oddly progressed into the world of IT, but still kept a firm footing in radio, be it commercial or community, and continued on that footing. And I suppose the life of the engineer evolved, and the curiosity evolved as well. So I've my life today, obviously, it sort of continues with technology. So dabbling in the world of virtualization and new hardware that everyone's bringing out, and obviously trying to now facilitate gaps, I suppose, in the market, you would say, but also gaps in curiosity. I think people want to do the things that people have done in years gone by, that would have paid a healthy sum of money to do. And I suppose as technology evolves, we can now sort of bring that at a more affordable cost. So that's sort of where I am today.
So Marc, at various trade shows, I've been doing some papers for the last actually 2.5 years, on the whole notion of how broadcast equipment has evolved over the years, from purpose-built gear to using general-purpose computing gear and making it do the things that we want. And I think we all kind of realize this, but I've been stating it in that way to kind of help just put give some perspective on where we are. So my journey into all this started in the mid-1990s, which was already about 5 years into the idea of radio station automation, right? So before automation came along, we did have various forms of automation on computers. We had, I was automating a station with literally a Commodore 64 computer. I didn't write the software for it. I just maintained the system that somebody else had built. But a Commodore 64 computer running some relays to put satellite networks on the air and to fire off liners and bumps and commercials and jingles from an Instacart machine. So this is a machine that held 48 tape cartridges, right? And the Commodore 64 was somehow, we loaded a log in there and it would play the satellite networks and play the jingles and spots and so forth. And that was an early foray into this whole notion of virtualizing what had been done with purpose-built equipment. Back in the earlier days when we had even
mechanical setups for automation systems. Well, fast forward a bit, we went through the years of automation systems, emulating cart machines and then playing a log. I worked for the folks at Scott Studios, which later became DMARC, which became Google Automation, which became Wide Orbit. So, there's at the same time, certainly other companies were doing the same thing too. And we've seen more and more and more, and now almost everything in a radio station now has an operating system. It's a computer running, doing something. And that's not just true for radio and TV stations, but it's also true for lots of other industries as well. And what I'm getting at here, in this long roundabout way, is we've taken something maybe like the telephone, or we've taken like what we used to buy from the phone company. We used to buy equalized phone lines to do a high quality remote broadcast, something very specific, very purpose built. The phone company would engineer these equalized phone lines, and we would put a mixer with maybe a transformer output at the remote end, or as you call, I think, the OB, the outside broadcast end. And at the studio, we would probably have the equalizer from the phone company, and it's going into some transformers and then into our audio console, and we would engineer a remote. Well, we went through several iterations of different ways to do that. One of them being ISDN, still using phone company lines, but using algorithms to get the audio data rate onto something that would pass through the ISDN lines. Now, of course, we can do audio remotes and video too over the internet. We're doing that right now as we speak. But you guys had an idea to put a new technology. We'll talk about it in a few minutes in much more detail, WebRTC, and wrap it in something really easy to use. Now, I've done enough talking here, and maybe I've taken some of your thunder and what you were going to describe, and I'm sorry, but I wanted to get that history out, from purpose-built stuff to general-purpose computing, making it do what we want. As soon as you get done with your description, we're going to show how Cleanfeed works, at least in terms of the user experience. But talk to me about moving into that world of doing remotes with a general-purpose computer.
Yeah, so it's quite interesting. I suppose I came into the field, I'll be honest, I'd never used ISDN before creating Cleanfeed, right? But I knew about it, and I knew of the troubles that users had with it sometimes, framing issues and sometimes even connectivity issues, or someone not dropping the line properly before the next call needed to be connected. So you're right, with purpose-built hardware came purpose-built problems, right? So this journey to create Cleanfeed came upon, it was actually a requirement that I sort of needed. At the time, we lost a satellite at a community radio station, which was bringing down news. And I was like, okay, well, it's audio being fed down the satellite and picked up on the desk. I have a satellite in my home. What if I could tune a box at my home and send it down the line in real time to the studio? So that was the problem. I now needed the solution, and of course, being a community radio station, we didn't have many funds to play with. So I thought, let me see if I can find anyone who's doing this as an open source project, because I knew about computing. Yeah, I was an IT consultant at the time, and I was like, okay, right, let me see if I can find something. A lot of Googling around, and you come across the general product, and you're like, okay, well, it's a couple $100 there. And it's like, well, this is going to be short term. Hold on a minute. I found it. This piece of software, aptly named TRX, was an open source bit of kit. It runs on Linux. And that's what I used, and started setting it up. It needed a few more in the Linux world. It needed a few more options to build it and actually run the program, because it wasn't a pre-packaged piece of software. So I did that, and I had a few questions for the developer, and his name was there. And I thought, okay, well, I'll email him and just ask him, do I need these extra bits, or can I get away with it? And got it running. It was brilliant. I ran it on a Raspberry Pi at both ends, sending and receiving at the studio end. Luckily, I didn't need a return piece of audio coming back from the studio. So that was good. So that kind of cut my problem in half. And I got it running. And, the latency was sub 100 milliseconds. It was perfect for just sending audio one direction. And that worked for, I think our satellite was down for maybe 3 or 4 months. So I had a satellite receiver running here, just purposely sending out audio at the top of the hour to the radio station at the other side. So that's sort of what I found and used. And I thought, hold on a minute. It took me like a day to get the thing running because there were so many sort of special bits that needed to be done. And I thought there must be a way to make this better. And I'd been reading about WebRTC, and I was like, we must be able to do something. And so I reached out. The other founder and partner is another Marc with a K. And he, at first there was some apprehension, like, I don't know about the browser. I don't know if we can really do this. And well, we met up and I was like, let's, get our heads together. And I think it was probably about 2 hours of being together in a room. We managed to get it working. And that was sort of what people would say is the inception of a product. And that's how it all began. So it was a weird circumstance, I should say, that turned into a new requirement and just making it easier. So that's sort of the background of it all.
I'm going to ask Suncast to get ready. Suncast is our producer, to get ready with the live screenshot that we have, and as he's getting ready, WebRTC is something I heard about several years ago, just after it came out at some kind of Google conference. It was taught. There's about a 45-minute video on YouTube about it. And I'm not a developer. I'm not a programmer. I kind of get a little bit of idea of things that plug in and go into software. But can you, WebRTC itself doesn't have a pretty UI, I guess. That's up to the developer to do what they want and to present to the user something that is appropriate to the task at hand. Can you describe a little bit about, before we go look at it, what you decided, what was going to be important for people who were going to use this product that would come to be known as Cleanfeed? What was important for them to be able to click on easily and get their connection to somebody else?
Yeah, so I think from our point of view, it was, we know we're engineers and we know what we've used in the past, but we just wanted to make the whole experience of making a remote connection very easy, right? And so I suppose our main goal was to ensure that the UI always remained clean, pardon the pun, and very usable, not just to say, you and I who know how this stuff works and we've dealt with, much more complex setups, but just the average user. I basically wanted my mum to be able to use it and send me an invitation and be able to control her own session. And I think we got there. So we've added more features, but again, with more features, we were able to place things in the right places. But yeah, so I think our main goal with the UI and the whole experience was, we'll give you the features, but we just want it to be easy to use. And I think that's what we got in the end.
I was looking over, you mentioned this program TRX for Linux. And it's kind of tweaky. There's command line stuff to type in with IP addresses and space -F and -480 or space 480. And just, it's tweaky stuff that mom could never do. Right. And probably, not to put them down, but probably, most radio station talent would not be interested in at all. They don't want to type in, echo space -N, blah, 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 this guy /sys, No, they want to click and have a connection. So let's, if we could here, let's get Suncast to show his screen. And so Suncast has just signed in with my account on Cleanfeed. And we thought we'd do an exercise here, Mark. So what you're seeing here is just a browser. It is, and it's not even actually the Chrome browser. It's whatever browser is available in the vMix video switching program that we're using at the studio in New York. I would imagine it's probably based on WebKit, right? Wouldn't that be likely, or based on what Chromium? One of those,
Well,
right?
Unless Suncast got an error, I think this is Chrome, because if it wasn't Chrome, you would have got an error at that startup.
Okay.
So, I should say that we built Cleanfeed from Chrome because we needed at least a base position to start from. So Chrome was our base point, and we'd like to see more browsers become available or activated in a couple of months, or maybe a short few years, so that anyone on any device can use it. But yeah, so that's Chrome, I suppose, running there, and that's the studio console that you're looking at.
And I'm guessing this would work on Chrome, say from a Chromebook too, right?
Oh yes,
absolutely,
100%.
Okay.
Yeah. They're really good devices.
Let's have Suncast go through inviting. Now, he can't just call you directly. He's going to invite you, and then you'll receive. Well, I'll let you describe it. Suncast, let's show that screen again, and follow Mark's instructions to invite him.
So you're looking at the studio console. So if you were controlling a session, you would sign in as your studio, and here you have great power to do a lot of things, and one of those things is making your first connection. So you would literally hit connect, which is that button over there. You would type in the name of your guest, so you could just type in my name, Mark,
MARC, and
then you could just put in an email address, Mark, MARC @cleanfeed.net.
Not like that email's not already out there, so I don't think we're going to be spamming you.
No, that's all right. And then you would just hit invite. And so what that does is it fires off an email as simply as that to my inbox. And all I will have to do at this end is, as you guessed it, I got an email that said, your Cleanfeed pass to Kirk has arrived, and he'd like to invite you to their session. And I get a green connect button, and all I do is click connect. We'll do some tab toying around here. And
so there you go.
It. We've got
you're connected to Suncast's computer in New York now.
Yeah, that's right. And it would be at a very high quality, or at least whatever your quality was set at in the audio tab. But typically, when you first start a session and you first open Cleanfeed, we set it to speech optimized, which is perfect for voice. And we don't do any filtering. We don't touch the audio. So if you want to send a full bandwidth signal down the line, well, you'll get it at the other end. So it's some would say it's better than ISDN. So it's that easy to do a connection.
On Suncast's computer, he's not sending any audio right now. But if he was, the green LED meter next to the mic would be jumping up and down.
That's right. Yeah, and it should. If I speak a bit louder, you should see a yellow point there. So it's a proper VU meter, or we call it a PPM meter. But yeah, it's again we've taken broadcast terminology and workflow and tied it into a UI that is easy to use and is familiar to the engineer even at face value. So we're quite proud of that, really.
So here's a goofy question. I'll try to break it here. If Suncast were to invite me to connect to him, could I do that? Could I connect two different instances of my own account?
Yes. So you're currently running the Pro version, which just has more features, but our basic version is actually free, and we don't limit any amount of connections or time on any calls. So we do encourage anyone to just jump right in and give it a go, really.
So if Suncast hit connect and invited me, by the way, would he have to invite me he could use any of my email addresses, right? It wouldn't have to be the account's email address or my account's email address.
You can use any email address. You'll just get a unique invitation there.
That you get a unique link from that invitation, right?
Correct. That's right.
And the link knows what to connect up to.
Correct. So what you could do is you could,
Okay.
if you had, say, 2 laptops, you could just bookmark those links once they've been generated and there's no time limit on them. You can always connect back to them. So let's say you had a studio set up. So you had a studio and, well, like you were seeing there, you had the studio panel. If you always knew you had one news reporter and one guest and, I don't know, and well, we call it an OB truck, but you call it, I've forgotten the term that you used earlier on. But you could set those links and bookmark them on the machines at the other end, so that if they were always connecting back in, they would just click the link and there you go. They're back into your session.
So tell you what, Suncast, why don't you click the connect button and send me an invitation, and I'll connect to you also. And this is going to demonstrate the fact that several people can be connected at the same time, right?
That's right.
With the studio, and so, well, I'll talk about that in just a minute. So, Suncast, go ahead and connect and send it to any of my email addresses. My Gmail is fastest because it'll come right to me, whereas my vanity address has to go hither and yon before it ever makes its way to me.
Trip round the world.
It does, and somewhere there's an undesired spam filter in there somewhere. So I don't get all my email. Well, let's see. I'm waiting now for an invitation. I'm not sure which. Oh, there it is. It showed up in my updates area. So let me. I'm gonna click. There's a connect button right there in the email. We'll click that. It opens a new browser window, as one might expect. And there's a start button, and voila! Look at that. It wants to use my microphone. I'll allow that, but da-da.
Excellent. So you can see in Suncast's screen there, because this might get a bit confusing. Your studio and myself have already established a connection, but of course we don't want the next guest to automatically come on the air, right? So they're muted. Right. So any additional guests are muted when they join the session. And then you purposely unmute them to bring them live into the room. They can, of course, hear the whole session as it's going along, but that's just one good way of closely ensuring that no spontaneous user can just start talking when they've not been told to do so, right? So
that's a good point, because a person could have a link that they were invited to sometime before and could accidentally or purposely reconnect to you, and you might be busy doing something else. So that's what that way not a rogue, but somebody you talked to before couldn't just barge in, right?
That's right.
Conversation.
Yeah, so
okay.
That's correct. Yeah, well, and I'll explain the preventative features that have helped that and limiting sessions, etc. So we can get onto that maybe a little bit later.
Yeah. So actually, we're going to take a break in a minute. But one thing I want to do is talk about some of the tech here. I think we've seen how easy this is, and so in a conversation, let me establish this. In a conversation where there's 3 people connected, each person is hearing the other people, in this case the other 2 people. Is that right?
That's right, yes, but they're not, I was going to say, they're not each sending and receiving and trying to mix the audio. We've actually built from the ground up a very clever audio engine that's managing all of that at the studio. So each remote client has just got to worry about their connection. The actual audio side of it, we manage. So yeah, it's quite useful in that respect, because it means there's less onerous on the guest and their device's bandwidth, and it just means that things are just done more efficiently.
Okay, and the studio would, if they were recording what was coming off of that computer. So if Suncast, if you could show that one more time, Suncast. So Suncast has audio coming out of that computer. And that's what Suncast is hearing is going to be a mix. If he would click that the grayed out or the blacked out handset and turn it green, I'm guessing Suncast would hear Kirk and Mark, but he is Kirk Harnax. So he's sending that, but he would hear a mix of Kirk and Mark at the same output of the computer. Is that right?
That's right, and I think we're hearing that back looped somehow. But yeah,
Okay.
so that's right.
Okay.
So the individual guests would hear the whole mix of the whole session. But of
Okay.
course, at the studio side, you can pick who you're listening to or not listening to in that case. Yeah.
Gotcha. All right. So we're going to talk about that built-in mix engine, kind of a mix minus engine, I suppose. And then we'll talk about some of the interesting selections of WebRTC. So guys, keep that connection up, because when we come back from our break, we're going to look at the audio options that a user can select to have that trade-off between bandwidth and audio quality that is available. This is like most codecs, but I like the way it's easy to use here in Cleanfeed. So hey, we're talking to Marc Bakos. He is with Cleanfeed.net in the UK. Their software is available free for download, free for use, and there is a pro plan, which gets you a few more features. We'll have Mark explain that later. This Week in Radio Tech, episode 442. I'm Kirk Harnack. Chris Tobin couldn't be with us. He's putting out a fire somewhere. Hopefully that's figuratively, not literally. And our show is brought to you in part by our friends at Broadcasters General Store and a product that's called the Pro Mix 4. Let's take a look at that beautiful Pro Mix 4. This is you know what? This audio console, it's a little mono audio console from Broadcast Tools. This would work perfectly with Cleanfeed. Absolutely perfectly. This would be so cool if you had several people locally, several talent at a ball game, at a parade, at a live remote broadcast. They get headphone feeds and they could each talk. They have on-off buttons and easy volume controls. This is a really simple mono mixer. Also with IFB, just full of features. It's really cool. So, Broadcast Tools. Don Wingett is the proprietor there and the founder. And Don designs equipment that just works. And it's compact. And even his manuals are compact. So I have called Don Wingett in the past, say, Don, I can't figure out how to do X. He would say, do you have your manual? Yes. Look at page 2. Yeah, I looked at page 2. Not just a minute, Kirk. Looked at the second paragraph and the second line. You see that right there? That's what you want. Oh, everything you need is in Don Wingett's manuals, and they are amazing. Well, this box, the Pro Mix 4, it's a full-featured audio mixing console, and it's perfect for lots of broadcast needs. Now, it may not do everything. It may not solve your problem in every possible way, but I'll tell you what, for most remote broadcasts, this is just amazing. It's just what you want to do. So let's look at some of the features here. The Pro Mix 4, as I said, it's compact, very compact, full-featured monaural mixing console. It has 3 combination mic inputs and a dedicated 4th input that can be switched between balanced line and the built-in USB audio interface. So there's built-in USB, so you can plug this up to your computer that's running Cleanfeed and have yourself a remote broadcast. It has 3 1/4-inch stereo headphone outputs included with individual controls for volume, mix, and pan. Yeah, each headphone output, you can control the mix. So that one talent that says, I want more me? Well, you can turn the pot and give them more me. So custom headphone mixes. Other features are like a switch selectable program limiter. So that's built in. So you don't, you're when your sports announcer stands up and yells, he shoots, he scores. It doesn't blow the meters up. It doesn't distort the output. It has a monitor output with muting and volume control, mix minus output for connection to an external telephone hybrid, and an on-air light relay output. So turn on an on-air light if you're in a situation where you need that. It's a great choice for remote broadcast and podcasting applications. Also, it's really affordable. How affordable? Well, give the folks at Broadcasters General Store a call, and they will hook you up with the best price around. Look at that, the green button, the USB in button right above number 4. So that way you can bring your USB audio in and have those people participate in the broadcast too. If you got some people at the other end of your Cleanfeed, or you can bring the studio in. Anyway, great little console. You're gonna love it. It's you can send this out with the disc jockey, with your announcer, the one that's not quite technically inclined. And I think they can hook it up pretty easily. And use Cleanfeed, click one button, bam, they've connected to the studio. Broadcasters General Store is the place to get this. Go to their website at bgs.cc. That's bgs.cc. Give them a call, too, at 352-622-7700. It's 352-622-7700. That's a number I have memorized practically, well, since about 1989. I think that's when I met Sam Phillips in Memphis, Tennessee. And he would always want to call the folks at BGS to get his best price. Sam would call me over to his office, and he'd say, Kirk, call them girls over at BGS and tell them to sharpen up their pencil. I'll tell you what, we'd get quotes, and we'd call around other broadcast dealers, and nope, nobody else was coming close. Broadcast General Store and the Broadcast Tools Pro Mix 4. Thanks a lot for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. All right, it's episode 442. I'm Kirk Harnack in the Telos Alliance studio in Nashville, Tennessee. Our guest is Marc Bakos with Cleanfeed.net. And we've been looking at Cleanfeed. Let's get maybe he can bring it up quickly. I don't know if Suncast can bring up that Cleanfeed screen again. We've got a couple of calls going on right here, a couple of connections. Kirk is connected. That's from my little Asus Chromebook laptop here. And also Mark is connected from the UK. And then Kirk, the one that says Kirk Harnack, that's the studio. That's Suncast logged in under my account there. So mix minus. This is interesting. This could be a real problem. Whenever you have two people, Marc Bakos, whenever you have two people on a connection, mix minus just isn't a problem. Each person talks, they hear the other end, no problem. But when you get more than two people involved in a conversation, you cannot have a situation where you're feeding everybody to everybody. That doesn't work because of delays and causes confusion and mental anguish. Tell me what Cleanfeed does to solve that problem.
So our I should call it our internal mixer. Again, we've kept all the clever bits behind the scenes, and we're doing just that. We're ensuring that every participant is sending and receiving only the audio that they need or don't need. Obviously, they don't want their own audio coming back, and we do that sort of under the hood. So it's while it's not laid out like a traditional mixer, and you're not having to set, I have to set this aux bus, but not send them back like you would do in the olden days. I say olden days. Some people still do it today, but heck, this is the UI. You'd never have to think about it. It just works. And so all the mix minusing and all the management is there under the hood, and it does it incredibly well. I don't think I've ever had to think about it or worry about it. In fact, the only mix minus I have to worry about is my own sub mixer, you would say. I can do routing on my side, and you would from an OB truck, I suppose, as well. Mm-hmm. Maybe have your own mixer, and the mixer you showed just a moment ago does its own. So, but yeah, in the hood, if you're just connecting to other guests and contributors, no one needs to worry about that. As long as they've got a good mic hooked up to their machine, even if that's a USB mic, and as long as they've got good headphones, because of course now we're sending and receiving, unfiltered audio, not like Skype or not like any other bits of remote, or I say remote audio software, but your general conferencing software. We're sending high quality audio, so it means there can be feedback. If you don't, if you're spewing out the audio from speakers at the other end, it just won't work. So this comes back to the whole, we've come from a broadcast background, and this works like a broadcast tool typically would. So there's some cautionary elements in there, but overall it behaves exactly as you'd expect it to behave.
So talk to me about selecting the audio quality. I guess we ought to have Suncast click on that audio icon button in the top and show us what you get on the screen. This is, even though this is a little tiny bit tweaky, it's still pretty easy. So there's the audio button, and there's a drop down there. Suncast, drop that down, and we'll talk about the options there for folks.
So when we came up with the idea of Cleanfeed and having the UI easy to use, we thought we should have options in there that are most typically used, and 3 of those are shown, and those are available in our free version of Cleanfeed. You've got a low quality talkback, so if you're on a quite a bad connection, or even a 3G connection, a low quality talkback conversation can work really well. We know of some broadcasters and podcasters that are using that, and they're really happy with it. I mean, it works really well. I mean, it's some would say even better quality than Skype is. So that's one of the options. We have a speech optimized setting, which, as you'd think, it's just a mono audio setting that will just send and receive audio in mono for the session. Which again, perfect if you're just speaking down a mono mic. And then we also have speech optimized, music optimized, I should say. So yeah, if you've got a console at one end of the country and you want to send a full music program down to the other end, well, you can do that straight from here. And again, because it's in the free version, you can go ahead and just use it today if you wanted to. So that's the beauty of having just easy selectable options there. But again, from our background, those are typically the more complicated elements, in terms of bit rate and that goes down the line. That's all handled behind the scenes, which is nice. And you saw two further options there, which were a higher quality mono and a higher quality music, and those come with our pro version. So that just gives the guys who have the bandwidth and who want to use that those options, that they're available there if you're a pro subscriber. So yeah, that's really helpful for at least someone making some quick decisions. But again, as engineers, and you know what it's like, you just want to have something that works straight away, and that's what that does. It's quick and easy to use audio options there.
So those options that are shown are those options that are native to the WebRTC development?
So we've tweaked that. In fact, there's a lot of stuff that out the box WebRTC does what you think it would do, but there's a lot of stuff in the functionality of Cleanfeed, which we've changed and added our own elements around it in order for this stuff to work. So yeah, it's pretty awesome. In fact, the one awesome thing that I should mention actually is over a typical connection, I should say, if you've got two, if you've got yourself and a guest connected over a cabled connection, we actually see typically less latency than a mobile phone call, which is amazing, and it's super high quality. So now, I mean, if you were trying to line up an outside broadcast and a studio, well, actually, you'd be sending the audio faster down the actual link than you would if you try to just call them over the phone. So it makes sense when you think about it. Your phone call is going to a cell tower, which is then going down a line, which is then going to another cell tower, and inherently you've got that delay. But for Cleanfeed, the delay is just the line to the studio. So your latency is actually typically much less than a cell phone call, which is pretty cool.
But would I be right in saying that the heavy lifting of handling the coding and the packets and scheduling that and moving them back and forth and providing maybe a dynamic amount of buffering that's handled by the WebRTC protocol?
That's right. Yeah. So the codec behind the scenes will handle that those conditions, and it does it really well. Actually, I don't think there's ever a time where we thought, oh, it's not really doing what we really want it to do. Actually, that's the one thing out of the standard that they got pretty, they nailed that pretty well.
So I've got some more technical questions, but let's spend just a minute. What are some of the uses that you see customers putting this to? And obviously I can think of, you go out and do a live remote from a auto dealer, or it seems like our stations in Mississippi do a lot of live broadcasts from the local cell phone retailer, right? Getting people in for the latest special to sign more people up on cell phone plans. But so in addition to outside broadcasts, sales broadcasts, what else is popular?
So we typically see quite a few podcasters using our platform, which is really great. Again, this comes back to the UI is so simple to use. Now we can give those tools to people like podcasters. So podcasting is very popular. You would have seen in the UI we have a record module. So alongside making those high quality links, we also record basically what you hear is the studio, which again comes from that broadcast background that we're used to, where we as a broadcaster record everything at the studio end. So it works in exactly in that way. We have pretty cool features there, like multi-track recording. So if you have more than one guest and you want them on separate tracks and you want to record the whole session, well, we do that right there, and you just hit the download button and you get a zip file with your fully lined up multi-track files. So that's pretty useful. It gives the editor folk the exact files that they want to use right at the end of the session, rather than just a stereo file.
That's pretty huge. And I was actually just thinking about this. You've put a good number of audio engineer bicyclists out of business, and you think, what the heck's Kirk talking about? Actually, even the folks at National Public Radio and perhaps other broadcasters who really appreciate doing an interview and having high quality from both ends, right? And I know that I don't know when the last time they did this was, but National Public Radio in Washington, D.C. certainly does every day plenty of interviews, audio interviews with lawmakers, right? And pundits and other newsmakers. And a lot of these lawmakers, they've got a phone handy, and that's all they don't have time to go to a studio to talk to NPR. So what some broadcasters did, and I know NPR did this, they would send a bicyclist out to navigate the streets of Washington, D.C. with a cassette recorder or a digital recorder. They would show up in the office of the lawmaker. They would put this thing on record right in front of the lawmaker at the same time that they were calling NPR. The phone call would go on, obviously, but the only purpose of the phone call was to transfer the questions and answers. But the audio is being recorded locally at the lawmaker's office, and of course, the questioner, the interviewer, was at NPR being recorded, right? And so then the bicyclist would grab that cassette recorder or digital recorder, hightail it back to NPR. They'd marry up the two tracks, and they'd have their interview.
That's amazing. Wow.
I don't know the last time that happened, if that was in the 90s or the early 2000s or when. But anyway, if a lawmaker can hit a button and have that interview, and you can record both ends and just provide it to like NPR, then they have their high quality feed right there, right?
Exactly, yeah. And that's the beauty of having, like I said, having the audio engine at the studio side really gives that power to, well, the studio operator. I mean, you would in a normal recording studio or radio studio, you typically record all your calls and anything else you wanted to record, or have played back later on as a feature. So again, taking those same practices and putting them oddly into the browser. It's fantastic when you think about it, because it opens up so many options for so many creative folk, and whether you're an engineer or a creative, it works for either case.
I was thinking of long form programming, and you mentioned podcasts. So certainly some podcasts are long form. You might have a long form interview with one or more people, even a roundtable discussion with people who are spread around the world. And Cleanfeed obviously is ideal for doing that. Yeah. Yeah, totally. There's
really, unless you're recording an incredibly long piece of audio, there really isn't any issues with doing that. And we've got guys doing 1-2 hour podcasts, and they're loving it. And it's I feel quite bad for them doing the editing at the end of the recording session, but they appreciate the tools that are there and that are available to them, which is pretty cool. There's maybe one feature I should mention actually for podcasting, and it's in the UI that you have there, and it's one of our pro features, and that's local audio clips. So if you're running a podcast that had an introduction and maybe a couple of sponsor audio pieces there, and maybe some sound effects of a dog barking, you can click and load them straight into your session. So if you were doing, again, even a live broadcast, you could play them back straight down the line, which is pretty awesome. So yeah, as well as live local inputs into your machine, you can have live audio files being played down the line as well. So it really is becoming a sort of miniature production studio in the browser, which again, whether you're a podcaster or broadcaster, those tools might be really useful to you depending on what you're doing.
And you mentioned this, if you get the recording, and where's the recording happening at your server somewhere, or in the browser, the studio, or what?
Yeah, that's right. So it's happening in the browser. So Cleanfeed's fully encrypted. I haven't mentioned this. All of the links and all of the audio that's traveling around the internet's fully encrypted, just by the very nature of how the service works. So we don't ever see your audio. We typically like to make a peer-to-peer connection. That's quite a tongue twister. That would directly connect your studio to your guest. If it can't do that, then our service can easily relay that via one of our proxy servers, which we have evenly distributed around the world. So if you're heavily firewalled, or your guest is heavily firewalled, we'll always try and make that connection whichever way we can. And we if we need to route the audio via a relay server, we'll do just that. I mean, if that's what it takes, and in all cases, we like to think that we've established every call possible, really, depending on the network situation. So again, so much power behind the scenes that are doing all those clever bits, but nothing really for the user to worry about.
I should point out what you just mentioned, that your server tries to establish a peer-to-peer connection between the parties, and this is pretty standard technology. It's certainly used in the voice over IP world in many cases, not every case, but in many paradigms it's used. It's used in the Telos product that I have behind me here, the Telos Zip 1. The Telos Zip server is used to maintain presence information and to maintain a connection and an open port, because every device is checking in about every 15 seconds, and typically VoIP phones do the same thing. They ping the server every now and then, and your local router says, "Oh, they made a request going out. I'll hold this port open until I see her." Well, for some number of seconds, and hopefully something will come back in. And if something doesn't come back in some number of seconds, then it closes that port so that nothing could come in from the outside. I take it Cleanfeed is doing the same presence tracking information, so that it knows your IP address, it knows where to talk back to, it knows where to send a call if somebody calls you. But just as Zip server does, if a firewall is preventing the server from saying, "Here, Joe, Kirk, you talk to each other directly. I don't need to be involved with your conversation." If that can't happen, then the server will relay the media, as we call it, will relay that audio. It's encrypted, but it'll relay it from one end to the other, because we know the ends can talk to the server. They were doing that anyway via the browser. Do I have that about right?
Yeah, I think that's pretty spot on. Again, that technology has been cleverly developed by the guys putting WebRTC together. So there's a lot of involvement getting that all to work, of course, because this is the nature of coding, right? But it's there, and the tools are incredibly powerful for the developer, i.e., us.
We touched on this for a second, and that is. I have a studio transmitter link. It's a 950 megahertz link. It goes, 10 miles to my transmitter site, and it's an older one, and it died. Lightning hit the tower, and my STL transmitter or receiver's out. Can I use Cleanfeed for some number of hours, or maybe even a day or two, to send audio to the transmitter site, assuming I have internet available out there? Can that work?
Yeah. So, whilst we don't favorably publicize the fact that it could do it, in fact, our terms and conditions say that we probably would say that don't do it for a prolonged period of time. But something like that could be quite useful if it's something to see you through, and it's a link you want for a short term. It could be used in that way. And like I say, we don't touch the audio going in and out. So yeah, whatever you're sending down the line, the other side will receive. So and it's low latency. So no encoding or decode. Well, there is, but it's so quick. You'd get the news at the top of the hour, right? So it's useful for seeing those sort of things tied down whilst you're looking for your next STL link.
Yes, while you're trying to do something else, but it can be a good quick backup if you need that.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Wow. We're talking to Marc Bakos. He's with Cleanfeed.net, and we've been showing you an example of how it works. And tell you what, we're going to take our last break. I always forget to tell our guests this. I'm so embarrassed. Marc, we try to leave our viewers and listeners with a tip of the week at the end of the show. It's a trick to make them listen to the last commercial. But, lots of shows do this. So we're going to ask you to come up with, what is a tip that you might leave people with? And hey, the tip could be a website that you find particularly helpful, a technique that you found very helpful, a rule of thumb, anything like that, or if you know of a piece of hardware, some unusual thing, maybe it's a Raspberry Pi or a Nano or something that, hey, it turns out that, running Linux and a Chrome browser, Cleanfeed works on this as well. It might be interesting. So maybe you have something unusual or interesting that our listeners can take away, but yet you've got 2 minutes to think about it.
Yeah.
Sorry to put you on the spot. Our show this week in Radio Tech. I'm Kirk Harnack in the Telos Alliance studio in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm sorry, but Chris Tobin couldn't make it in today. He is putting out a figurative fire at a transmitter site, and we hope all that's good. I'm sure we'll hear about it next week. And we're going to take a quick break and hear from our friends at Lawo. We'll be right back.
There has probably never been a better time in history to buy a new radio mixing console. Today's consoles are more sophisticated than ever, with more features and functions than you can shake a stick at. But have you noticed how complicated they are? There's a sea of knobs and switches and displays and buttons. Some of them look like you might need a pilot's license to do your show. Well, a board doesn't have to be complicated to be powerful. Just look at the new Ruby mixing surface from Lawo. The first thing you notice is how smooth and streamlined it is. Ruby has lots of cool tech, but what it doesn't have is that confusing ocean of buttons that clutter things up. Now, we all know that there are some console features the jock only uses once in a while, so why dedicate controls to them? Ruby fixes this problem by moving those once-in-a-blue-moon controls to a touch-sensitive, customizable GUI that happily shares screen space with your other studio software, helping you fight control room clutter. Thanks to this design innovation, talent that use Ruby produce smoother shows with less errors. Controls that are used the most fall naturally to hand, while functions that rarely need adjustment are easily controlled with just a couple of clicks in the context-sensitive GUI. And Ruby has cool features you won't find on other boards, like Auto Mix, an intelligent gain writing function that guarantees the perfect mix for multi-mic morning shows and call-in segments. Dual mode snapshots that instantly switch the motorized faders between on-air and production modes, and enough DSP and I/O options to make even your pro sound pals green with envy. And because quality is as important to Lawo as it is to you, every console is proudly built to fanatically precise standards at Lawo's own factory in Germany. If you're ready to declutter your control room, do yourself a favor. Check out the new Ruby and the other cool Lawo radio tech at www.lawo.com/TWiRT.
Thanks a lot, Lawo, for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. And do go to their website, lawo.com. Add the /TWiRT, and they'll know that we sent you, and it'll take you right to the radio stuff. You can skip all the $500,000 audio consoles that they make and go right to the radio consoles. All right. Hey, it's Kirk Harnack and episode 442. We're just wrapping it up. And I wanted to, what did I have here? Doggone it. Oh, yeah. I know what it was. I had a tip of the week myself. I've mentioned it before, and I found it useful again just this past week. And that is this little green button. I know you got to have an iPhone to do this, but this little green button that brings up FaceTime. And FaceTime is just awesome to help you troubleshoot problems. Because, so often as an engineer, we know exactly what we need the person at the other end to look at or do or touch or move or switch or tell us the status of. And the person at the other end is not an engineer, and they don't know. And I had a guy, he's great on the air, really great on the air. I told him, okay, go in the rack and look at the Telos HX6. That's our phone system at one of our station clusters. And he said, it's not here. So, yeah, I know it's there. No, it's not here. It's okay. Well, look carefully. It's under this server. Nope, it's not there. Gee, nobody stole our HX6. So I said, tell you what, let's FaceTime. So I called him back on FaceTime, and he waved the phone up and down the rack, and he said, see, it's not there. It's not there. Yeah, it is there. I saw it. So that HX6. Yeah, that HX6. And from there, we troubleshot the problem. We had him back with his phones in a matter of seconds, actually, once he found the HX6. So, yeah, FaceTime is great. I'm not sure if there is an equivalent in the Android world that is as easy as FaceTime. I know there was a program called Duo, and it seems like I used that a couple times, but I wish there was a great cross-platform thing. You can use Skype, something like that, but FaceTime is just so easy. So find out which of your disc jockeys has an iPhone, and if you have one too, then you can FaceTime with them, and it's just easy. You can help your mom out too. I've got this error on the screen. Well, okay, Mom, show me with FaceTime, and voila, get that solved. No, Mom, don't click on that. That's a scam. Oh, well, why would somebody want to scam me? As Mom, they don't care who you are. So there you go. That's my tip of the week. FaceTime. Marc Bakos with Cleanfeed. Do you have a tip for us?
I do actually, and in fact, it's one of the most commonly things we get asked a lot, which is whilst people don't have a studio mic hanging about for the odd podcast, unless of course you're in a studio, we find just USB mics really useful to use, and these are pretty cool. Actually, I showed to the camera. It has obviously a USB. If I can point this out correctly, over there.
Tough to do.
But it also has XLR as well. So you can actually use it in a mixer if you wanted to, or just hook it up straight to your Chromebook. I mean, you've got a Chromebook there, and it's also got a local monitoring port as well. So yeah, we find these USB mics, I mean, they're, like $50 or $60. And they're really good. They're nice dynamic mics, and they work really well. So that's my tip of the week. If you just need a go-to mic, just leave one of those in your bag with a USB cable. And, in the worst case scenario, take out your laptop, hook in a mic, start recording.
You're actually in good company recommending that. That has been recommended years ago on the show, not lately. But I've got one here at the office, and it's in my Go kit because
amazing.
It's got a sound, basically a sound card built into it. So it's got that headphone output, right? So bring some earbuds, bring a headphone, and plug it into your laptop, and you can hear the other people. When I was in Hawaii, I did one of our shows from the hotel room, and that was the mic that was just the easiest thing to hook up, and bam, it worked.
Yeah, does the job. Yeah, it's fantastic.
And in the US, it's under $80 US, so it's not expensive. Not terrible.
Yeah, I mean, it's I mean, I know your Shure SM58s and that, the Go, the workhorses of the microphones, but of course they're all XLR, so you have to have a mixer, and it's like, well, just take the sub USB or use a XLR. So yeah, it's the best of both worlds.
It's country and Western, as we say. Yeah. That is the AT2005 USB, I believe, is the right number on that one. Is that what you got?
I think this is a new one. This is ATR2100 USB.
Okay. And that's what Suncast put into the chat. Yes, that's a newer one, ATR2100 USB. I've got the older one, apparently.
Right. Okay.
And the list price is at $79 US. It's available at Amazon, for example, for about $68. And probably similar guts. Yours is silver. I have one that I think is a dark. It's black in color. So good. Yeah, excellent. And you know what? If you've got a guest who just doesn't want to be bothered with buying a microphone, you could even just pop that in the mail and send it to them.
Exactly. Send them one of these and a Chromebook for $150, right?
Yeah.
Throw that in there as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hey, so just I hope the answer is not complicated. So obviously this works in cleanfeed.net works in the Chrome browser on a Chromebook. It works on a Mac. It works on a PC too, right? What mobile devices can this work well with right now?
So with Android, we're seeing it's a your mileage may vary situation. So if some devices work really well, some aren't quite there just yet. So Android's on its way. And iPhone, we're getting mixed results. It's still a beta feature. And that's only working with guest connections. So if you send an invitation to someone on an iPhone, Normally, if they're using the earbuds, it works really well. But in some cases, the volume differs slightly, and we're working through that. But yeah, we're getting there. Every month that passes, the things become better, I should say. So yeah, and obviously our continued involvement in the process also helps with that as well.
Well, I'm going to try it out with my default browser, I guess, on my well, it's not my. I don't know if they let you do it the default. I use the Chrome browser on my iPhone typically, but I guess the default is going to be Safari. If I click a link somewhere, it brings up Safari. So I have to copy and paste the button link into my Chrome browser.
Well,
right.
Here's a funny thing.
Okay.
I'll wrap it up quite quickly. And on the iPhone, Chrome actually isn't the Chrome browser. It's actually the Safari browser wrapped with Chrome bits. Apple are quite strict about who can actually make browsers for their platform. So I think they felt a little bit threatened.
So on my phone, I clicked the connect button that I sent to myself earlier, and it actually opens Chrome, but I got a message saying, please open this link in Safari. I'm not going to show
Safari,
the link.
right. Yeah. So we've had to, because of that limitation, use Safari as the default browser. So like I said, it's getting there, and we'd like to think that in the next, well, hopefully less than a year, please, that you can click on a Cleanfeed link on any device and it would just work. So that's the end goal. But yeah, so but on iPhone it will work. It will just give you slightly different sort of feedback depending on what device you have already hooked up to the phone, etc.
I tried it right now, but I have no idea where my button is to start the Safari browser.
Safari, brilliant.
I've I buried it somewhere, so because I just deal with the Chrome browser typically.
Just never use it.
I just never use it, but it pops up. I'll have to figure that out. All right, we'll give it a try.
Awesome.
Hey, Mark, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for joining us so late. What city are you in there in England?
So I'm based down south in a county called Surrey. Not to be confused by the US area called Surrey. I think there's one somewhere.
Don't know.
But yeah, I'm in a small town near Guildford, which is nice.
Oh, okay.
Very nice and scenic.
Is that anywhere near Kent or not?
No, it's not actually. Although I was there this weekend working on transmission towers, so that was fun.
Okay, well, good deal. All right, the website is cleanfeed.net. You can get a free account there. Try this out if you like. If you want the pro features, then just throw some coin their way according to their terms, and you will have the pro features as well. Mark, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate you staying up late. It's been a real pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, likewise.
And we'll be trying this out at our own radio stations, which we have 14. So I'm sure we're going to get a chance to try it out.
Amazing. Awesome.
All right. Hey, thanks also to Suncast, our producer on This Week in Radio Tech. He does a great job, and I appreciate all his efforts today to make the show look great. And also thanks to Andrew Zarian, the founder of the GFQ Network. Without him, this wouldn't be here. So we're glad that he's here. Also, our best wishes go out to Chris Tobin with whatever fires he's fighting. Hope that all that turns out well, and I'm sure we'll hear about it in an upcoming episode of This Week in Radio Tech. Hey, tell your friends about it. Thanks a lot for subscribing, and we'll see you next week on This Week in Radio Tech. Bye-bye.